on Hedorah's face part of his suit is the eyelids. And Hedorah, by moving his eyelids, you get such strong facial expressions. He has such a smug look on his face when he's laughing at Godzilla in that pit. And
absolutely.
It's just by his eyelid closing a little bit.
Even when he's not laughing, you get this big feeling that he is entirely pleased with himself.
Yes, Hedorah's very happy at this point in the fight. And so now the Doctor has heard that Ken's at Mount Fuji and Hedorah's at Mount Fuji, and so him and his wife head off because the Self-Defense Force has constructed those electrodes that he told them to, and they're going to try to use them on Hedorah now. And so Godzilla is still fighting, kind of, but at this point he's more or less out of the fight for the moment. They fight a little bit more, they roll back down the mountain together, but Godzilla cannot do anything to Hedorah here.
No.
And so the humans manage to use these helicopters, dropping like oxygen bombs.
Yeah, because the oxygen hurts him a little bit, or at least like agitates him.
Yeah.
Probably just because of the purity of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they use that to initially get him to move towards the electrodes.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one hits, Hedorah turns around and shoots the helicopter down with his crimson beam.
Yep.
And then the next one tries to fly over. Hedorah tries to shoot it and misses, and the helicopter just books it.
Doesn't drop its oxygen bomb, it leaves. And Hedorah manages to walk into between the electrodes. Either way, they're blinking like high beams at him, and Hedorah's drawn to the light. And so he's like walking over to it, and he's very like transfixed by these lights. And
last second, the helicopter comes back.
Yeah, it's like he's already between the things, but when Godzilla and Hedorah were fighting, they destroyed the electrical wires they were planning to use to power this. And so now they at the last second have to go and try to connect more electrical wires to this thing. And so they actually aren't ready to fire the weapon when they lure Hedorah into it.
Yeah, and he's like right before, he's not quite in position yet.
Yeah.
And then the helicopter comes right back and finally drops that last bomb, and then Hedorah blows up that one too.
Yeah.
And it falls in front of the trucks, and so between the fire and the lights, it moves Hedorah again.
Yeah. And Hedorah walks right between the things. And they keep calling back to the people who are setting up the wires, like, is it ready yet? And they're like, no, we need more time. And they're like, we don't have any more time. Like, we're not going to be able to lure Hedorah back in here again, you know? And so they're like, we can't do it. It's not ready yet. And suddenly, off the corner of the screen, some Godzilla fire comes shooting in, and it hits the electrodes, and it activates it. And Hedorah gets caught in between the two of them, and it electrocutes him. And he starts to dry out. There's all these great shots of like close-ups of Hedorah's skin getting like dry and scaly and gross, like dry mud looking. And Godzilla is walking up and he's shooting his fire at the electrodes, and he keeps making the electrodes shoot more electricity into Hedorah. And
it dries him up and he falls over and he collapses. And this is where Godzilla gets extremely personal with this fight. So he goes up to
before we get further into this scene, I just want to point out that up until now, Godzilla has more or less been an, like, not too barbaric fighter. He lets King Ghidorah fly away most of the time. He was going to leave Kumonga there before Kumonga decided to keep fighting. He let that one Kamacuras go that time. Godzilla will let an enemy monster retreat if the enemy monster is done fighting. This is not one of those cases.
It's the only time you get really see him like be angry and he wants this thing dead.
Yeah.
So he goes up to the corpse and then he like squats down and he makes like the most serious face. And then he reaches in, he puts his hand in, and he pulls out one of Hedorah's eyes.
Yeah, and the eyes are white. So for the longest time there was a little bit of like controversy of what Godzilla pulls out. Some people thought it was eggs. But it is supposed to be Hedorah's eyes. This goes into Tomoyuki Tanaka telling them not to give them any more money, is they wanted to paint the eyes red so that you could tell they were Hedorah's eyes, but they didn't have any more money to work with, and so Hedorah's eyes are white in this scene. But like if you look at the script, I think it says that Godzilla pulls Hedorah's eyes out.
So he has the eyes, the two only organic parts,
and
then he has them in his hand, and he shoots the electrodes one more time, and they electrocute it, and they turn to dust in his hand.
And he's standing there, holding them like this, crumbling the dust in his hand.
Oh, and he's just, and it's just the shot of his hands going like this.
He is eating this up.
And then once he's satisfied with that feeling, he throws it up in the air, and then he turns around
to walk away. And he starts walking away, and then like something clicks with him, and he doesn't quite trust that this is over yet. And he looks back, and he kind of like hits the Hedorah body with his tail.
No, he hits a rock.
Hits a rock at the Hedorah body, and another Hedorah flies out of it. And Godzilla's like, I knew it! I knew there was another one!
And so Godzilla pulls out the best trick he could have pulled out in this situation.
Godzilla does one of his greatest moments of all time. He turns around, and he crosses his arms, and he puts his tail between his legs, and he points his face down, and he breathes his fire into the ground, and he shoots off into the air like a rocket ship. And then they use the prop of Godzilla like curled up in a ball that they used in Monster Zero to show that Godzilla is now flying after Hedorah.
He passes Hedorah.
Yeah, flying faster than Hedorah and he's no longer shooting the breath at the ground, by the way. He's now shooting it directly out in front of him to propel him backwards, flying past Hedorah. And so he catches Hedorah, and he then pulls out what will be Godzilla's signature move going forward. Almost, to me, is just as iconic as his atomic breath. He grabs Hedorah by the tail, and he just pulls him up into the air and slams him back down. Last night I was talking about how Toho got comfortable like taking the people out of the suits and shooting stunts with just the empty suits. This move is their magnum opus with that technique, and they use it constantly after this. Godzilla consistently will grab a monster by the tail and just start slamming it up and down into the ground. And he does that several times with Hedorah. And then back at the electrodes, we get news that now they're set up and they're ready to go again. The guy who's like the general is like, what are you talking about? It's too late now. It's not too late. It cuts back to Godzilla, and Godzilla's flying again.
Godzilla's like, hey, you remember that time you moved me while flying? Well, guess what, Hedorah?
Here we go. He grabs Hedorah and he starts flying Hedorah back to the electrodes.
He lands it, and then
he stands back to watch the humans do their work. And they flip the switch, and they
blow a fuse.
They blow a fuse. The electrodes fire for about a full second, and they stop. And they're like, "What happened?" And they're like, "Our fuse blew. We think we're out of power again." And there is, I shit you not, a shot. They show Godzilla, and he goes, like Godzilla is done with the humans in this movie, and so he has to breathe his fire onto this electrodes again to make them work.
Again, he has just this look of disappointment in his face, just pure disappointment. Again, with no not too many. He has a lot more moving pieces than Hedorah does, but like not enough to create that much facial expression. And like just in his jaw movement and then
body language,
and the way his eye is, it's just you can tell he's disappointed. And he blows one more atomic breath into the thing, activates it, and he kills the last piece of Hedorah. And then, so that one falls, and Godzilla reaches into that one.
Yep, he bends down, and he reaches in, and he pulls a piece out, and then suddenly the song from the beginning starts playing again. Like the extra triumphant, loud version of the song.
And he just starts pulling Hedorah's organs out. Pulling him out, throwing him on the ground,
all over the place.
Throwing him on the ground, and it's all over the place.
This scene goes on for like a full minute of Godzilla just reaching into Hedorah and tossing pieces of him all over the place.
And then he shoots the electrodes.
And then he starts fucking stomping on the body too.
Right, about the stomping. He's very personal. And then so once he's done that, all the sludge is around him, and he fires the electrodes one last time, and officially Hedorah is dead.
Yup. They show a shot of all of the Hedorah pieces on the ground have dried up.
No fucking tadpoles anymore.
No more Hedorah. And Godzilla turns. There's no joy in Godzilla leaving in this movie.
No,
he
none.
turns and he very pissedly walks back into the ocean.
It's it. He's done.
Yeah, the kid runs off after, like, "Hey, Godzilla, thank you, goodbye, Godzilla." And Godzilla doesn't even turn around. He keeps going.
He turns around one time, and then he just immediately turns back and starts walking off.
Godzilla's not friends with this kid, and he goes back into the ocean. And the movie ends with a cliffhanger that there could be another Hedorah out there. Bono wanted to make another movie that had Hedorah in it that was going to take place in Africa. That one did not get made. There's, to this day, has not been a sequel to Godzilla vs. Hedorah. So maybe one day, but that cliffhanger never got resolved. This was the last we saw of Hedorah, really. And so Godzilla did kill Hedorah here. And so this movie is great for just so many reasons. This is a hard recommend for me.
Absolutely. You got it for the silly parts, for the good parts, the experimentalness of it. Mm-hmm. It's definitely one of the best Godzilla movies, especially in this era. Mm-hmm. Personally, for me, I very much enjoy this movie. Again, like I said at the beginning, it's one of my personal favorites. I think a lot of the things they tried to do really land. The acting is really good. Mm-hmm. The kid's acting is really good too.
Yeah, the kid does a good job in this movie.
So like the cast, although really the humans take a back seat in this one, mm-hmm. They still do a great job. So this movie had more of the monsters carrying it, and even though they were non-verbal monsters, they carried the movie very effectively. They mm-hmm. get a lot of emotion from them. So you get a lot of character development out of them. Godzilla kind of has an arc. Cameron was kind of talking about this earlier. I don't want to steal his thunder on this one, but mm-hmm. Cameron had said that Godzilla essentially has a character arc as these movies, the Showa era movies, will move along. You can kind of really see his transition from being, like the destroyer to the protector in this one. So you see that, and it really stands. Mm-hmm.
This is the first movie where, like, when Godzilla shows up, there's no, oh god, it's Godzilla, we better leave. It's like, thank God, Godzilla's here, and he's going to save us now. Godzilla is the first one where Godzilla is strictly here to help us. He's only going to save us. There's no worry that he's going to, destroy Tokyo when he's done. And so that part of the movie is fantastic. That's going to be consistent, more or less, going forward. I think in Godzilla vs. Gigan, there's a little bit of fear of Godzilla.
But definitely not as much.
No, Godzilla's definitely going to be the good guy consistently from now on in the Showa series.
Right, and so this is where that kind of interpretation of Godzilla comes from. Mm-hmm. It's everything about the movie, very good. Again, I recommend it. Sub versus dub, I would, again, not to, mm-hmm. to cop out, but both. Because it honestly, that you get different versions out of it. And that's going to be the problem with a lot of this, with these particular movies, is because, just because of how marketing teams and the producers on the American side very much were trying to hide the fact that, not to try to hide it as Japanese, obviously couldn't hide that, but try to hide as much as those elements as possible. This is the same era that, they're trying to make Speed Racer and Voltron, mm-hmm. and they're trying to hide all the Japanese elements of that. From that time, so you're getting very different experiences out of this movie. Again, whole parts or not whole parts, but there were some scenes we were watching that we were like, I don't remember seeing this scene before, and I have watched this movie so many times. Jake has seen this movie a number of times, and there were scenes in this movie, scenes in the Godzilla fight, that we didn't remember having ever seen before. Yeah, so there was unique elements to both. It's not that it adds a lot to it to see the Japanese version, see the missing scenes. I don't think them not being there detracts from the dub. It's just the dub is structured different, so you're getting a slightly different version of the story.
Yeah.
So again, I can't. There's some Godzilla movies where you can definitely make a hard decision on this. But for this one and a lot of the Showa ones, just because of how they're handled, they're so different. You kind of have to see both.
Yeah.
Otherwise, personally, the movie really cemented my love for Godzilla. Mm-hmm. I think it really encapsulates enough of all the different bases Godzilla touches. Hedorah is a terrifying monster. Mm-hmm. The message of the pollution still stands as a message that Godzilla always, so Godzilla has a message every time. Mm-hmm. It's still saying nuclear power is bad, but at this point, now they're worried about pollution, the effects of this nuclear power versus an industrialization. Yeah. That is even more destructive than the power of the atom bomb, which is the whole point of the movie, essentially.
Yeah. You can tell that this, parts of Japan were having a big issue with, pollutants in the air and stuff like that. They mentioned that in the subversion of Godzilla's Revenge last night, too. There's a scene where Ichiro's dad is saying that the reason why him and the mom work so many long hours is because they want to get enough money so that they can move Ichiro somewhere where the air is cleaner. Because where Ichiro's living is another one of those big industrial areas. And so this was clearly a big issue for Japan at the time. And it's a big issue now. for the whole world. Like, the message of this movie is still, like,
relevant
as
to
strong
today.
now as it was then. Still, we're just not treating the environment well.
And it's scary just to see the same things happening now. Like, the concept of the trash island floating towards Godzilla was supposed to be like a shocking image in this film, but there's the giant plastic island that exists in real life that we know about now, and so it's not shocking anymore.
No.
Like, these things are real, and it is very scary. And it's crazy to think that there was a time when, like, that concept was foreign and that concept was
like a
scary.
sci-fi concept.
Yeah, and like it just really hammers in the point that like we're not that far off.
Yeah, the stuff this movie was afraid of happening is coming. You know, what do we have? Like, what, 50 years to fix things before it's over? Godzilla's not going to come save us, people. We have to do it ourselves.
The trash isn't going to collect itself into one pile of monsters.
Big monster that Godzilla can come beat up for us. We have to take care of it.
Exactly.
And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's the thing, is Godzilla, there isn't that actual thing where Godzilla burns all the trash for them.
No.
He beats Hedorah because Hedorah's a monster, but the responsibility to clean up the earth and take better care of it is on the humans. Godzilla's not going to solve this problem.
Absolutely, and that's the whole ending. Is that's why and I think that's the reason why they put in yet another one at the end for the second Hedorah. Is all the trash is still there. If any of the Hedrium still exists out there, if it finds its way to the trash, then Hedorah will appear again.
Yep.
Because the humans have to take care of the trash. Godzilla can't constantly be beating, and that's part of the reason why it was important that the humans create the electrodes, because it's part of the proof that only the humans
can solve their own problems. Yes, Godzilla cannot beat Hedorah on his own in this movie. He needs the humans to help him solve the problem.
Godzilla is part of nature, and the human waste is destructive towards nature.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because Hedorah is almost like, at this point, Hedorah is now what Godzilla was at the beginning of the Godzilla franchise. He's an incredibly destructive, terrifying monster capable of wreaking mass havoc that is 100% a result of, like, man's, like...
The folly of man.
Folly of man, exactly. And he's just like another side of Godzilla.
And he's even worse because the results of him even being there is instant death versus the slow radioactive death that Godzilla used to bring.
Yeah.
And now this is like even worse.
Yeah.
And it's overpowering Godzilla, and it's definitely a powerful message to get in the movie, to see Godzilla in such a weak point. Is to prove the point that like it's our fault.
Exactly, that we're the reason Godzilla's having such a tough time right now.
Exactly. So this movie is a great experience. I'm glad I was able to make it for this one again. This is one of my favorites. I am sad I missed Invasion of the Astro Monster.
Yeah, Jake would have been good in that one.
I would have been happier with that one, and I could have told my Akira Takarada story. So Akira Takarada will not appear again in these movies until Godzilla and Mothra battle to save the Earth.
Long in the way down the line.
Yeah, so that's going to be a long time from now. And if I miss that one, it won't be until Final Wars.
Really? I thought he was is he not in another one of the Heisei movies?
No, he's just in Battle to Save the Earth.
I think I picture his character in King Ghidorah for some reason.
I'm sure they might flash back to him, but
No,
he's
I
not
don't
an
think so,
actual
but
character
I
in
just
anything
picture it.
other than Battle to Save the Earth.
So Jake's got 2 more chances to get here
And get my Akira Takarada story in there organically without being like, now I'm going to tell you a story about a man who wasn't in this film. Sir, not appearing in this film.
But yeah, Jake will come back for sure. He's going to be back, not tomorrow night, but soon, to talk about Megalon with us too.
It's true, and all that is one of my penultimate.
Oh yeah, Jake's going to have so much to say about Megalon.
Oh, absolutely, because Megalon is my second favorite villain monster, and my favorite Godzilla hero monster of all time is in that movie, who I won't say anything about. If you know who he is,
you know what's coming.
And otherwise, we're going to talk about him.
Yep, it's going to be a very personal review for me too. But tomorrow night we have another very personal review for me.
Even more so.
Yeah, because my favorite monster is coming. So we'll see him tomorrow night, but until then, Hedorah, hard recommend on both the sub and the dub versions. Just watch it however you can.
Just watch it.
Just watch the movie. Good night, everybody.